So we're underway. Joel Sherman is here. We're going to go over all of our writers' ballots individually. Joel Sherman is first. Joel is famously a small hall guy. See, you'd want to shrink this place down, wouldn't you? You want to just get a little shrink-wrap, little mini version of this? Is that what you want?
I've learned over time that it's tough to vote. However anyone votes, I'm fine with it.
I'm only having a little fun with it. That's Joel Sherman. Again, he's stringent, but you should be. It's exclusive. If you start letting in a ton, it diminishes what you have. Here is Joel Sherman's ballot, which is a little larger this year, right, Joel? So, all right, go over it for us.
Yeah, I mean, so Adrian Beltré, we began the show. I just don't want it to have short shrift for Adrian Beltré because he's going to waltz in today, and I think we're going to talk about all the borderline guys.
Yep.
So yesterday on the show, we were talking about David Wright and Scott Rowland. Like, David Wright didn't play as much as Scott Rowland. Scott Rowland didn't play as much as Beltré. Just what does attendance mean? Beltré played 140 or more games 14 times. That's as many as Wright and Rowland combined. Exactly. And by being durable, besides being excellent, he gets to those big counting numbers, well over 3,000 hits, nearly 500 homers, I believe 5 Gold Gloves. You know, he's a great all-around player. And I made this point yesterday also, which was Jeff Bannister, who's the bench coach for the Diamondbacks during the World Series. I was talking to him. He's the bench coach for the Diamondbacks. He managed Beltré for 4 years.
Right, in Texas, yeah.
I brought up Beltré's name. The first 5 minutes, uninterrupted, were about his toughness. He had an oblique injury, and he was supposed to miss a certain amount of time. How do you get to the games played? He ignored the amount of time he was supposed to miss, and he got back out there. And Jeff Bannister talked about what it meant. We were talking about Utley, what it means to your whole team when you play a certain way, what that meant to a whole team, the way Beltré played.
Beltré is a fascinating case. We're going to get into it a little deeper. By the time he was age 30 season, he was not a Hall of Famer. Right. He was a Hall of Famer afterwards. All right, go back to it. Carlos Beltrán gets in, Chase Utley and Joe Mauer. Oh, let me just deal with Utley and Mauer. Were you on the fence or close? Did you think you were going to get there? When you did your research, what did it tell you? So
I wrote a column today on our Post Plus site. It was about my kind of history of how I did this. I started working at UPI in 1984. Like, three of the way the baseball writers' cards work, the lower the number, the longer you've been in the association. We had cards 1, 3, and 5, right? One of the guys who was 3 rode the trains with the Yankees. He covered it for the New York Sun.
Right.
One of them played in the minor leagues for the St. Louis Browns. These were the guys who influenced me, and they always talked about the idea of the Hall of Fame is defined by who you keep out, as opposed to who you put in. Because think about how great the guy is who's better than 98% of the players ever. So now what are you saying about the guys who are in the 99th, 100%? And that was very influential to me. And I just started to think over the last, 5 years in particular, am I defending a beachhead that's become irrelevant? You know, and I've had to rethink over time. And I went from the 1% to kind of what in my mind is the 1.5%. And then once I did that, I feel like Utley and Mauer were such difference-making players when they were great for an extended period of time. I look for greatness. And I just thought that greatness and winning are big to me.
Exactly.
And those guys had a lot to do with greatness and winning.
Right. And still going by the numbers, you need a statistical background. The guy has to be, objectively great. But again, looking for what used to be a guy, I briefly explained it. At one point, there was not only no baseballreference.com, there wasn't a baseball encyclopedia. So all you had was the totals. I mean, the guys here at the Hall of Fame will tell you, just had the totals. So that's why 3,000 hits, or he played 22 years, those were the benchmarks of a Hall of Famer. We see him on the plaques up here now.
Can I talk about someone else I voted for? Because I think he's getting lost this year because he's not going to get in. And we're talking about the guys who are close, and that's Beltrán. We talked about him a lot last year because it was the first year he was on the ballot, and it was the first year where people could, quote-unquote, punish him for his involvement with the 2017 Astros. I mean, as clearly a ringleader, he lost his job with the Mets as manager before day one because of it, which is pretty good punishment. To me, as opposed to something like steroids, go look at that. That is the 20th season he played in the major leagues. He was a below average performer. His Hall of Fame career was in the first 19 years of his career. And in the first 19 years, this is a dynamic two-way player who, if you're looking for how do you cross the borderline among players with 200 steals in the history of the game, this is the guy with the best percentage in history. He's got well over 1,000 OPS in the postseason. He's one of the best postseason performers of all time.
By the way, 8 years, if you want to use WAR, 6-win player for 8 years. That's a Hall of Famer, right? He's all-around star player.
So to me, it feels like he's getting way more punishment than he should. If I voted the old way, how I voted, Beltré and Beltrán are my only 2 picks. I think Beltrán is actually an easy Hall of Fame.
Right. Well, that was what was thought of until the Astros thing and the sign-stealing thing happened, was that he was tracking, his reputation was there. I think people properly saw as well that this is an excellent fielding center fielder who can run, hit for decent power, and they made the proper adjustment. All right, last thing, we talked about it briefly, but you got to get into the weeds on Gary Sheffield. I even said yesterday, Joel, look, I'm used to being lied to by professional athletes who use PEDs. I'd like to believe some of them, and in the cases of Gary Sheffield and Andy Pettitte, they've copped to a small amount. I'd like to believe them. I think you're not crazy to try to say, all right, I want to believe this guy, I'll give him your vote. I am surprised, though, that you gave them the vote. I thought you would hold out, and a lot of people are holding out. Yeah,
I think he's an historically great hitter, over 500 homers. Again, over the course of the year, I don't think about my Hall of Fame ballot just when it comes. If I try to talk about it, think about it all the time. I asked a series of pitchers who I respected going into this because I knew I was going to re-examine them. And it was 6 for 6 with the veteran pitchers who I talked to, I respected, on, like, when you played against Sheffield, were you thinking about Sheffield there? Yeah. If I don't go 1, 2, 3 this inning, Sheffield's coming to the plate.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not sure people even felt that way about Todd Helton, who was a great hitter. There was a certain menace fear that he created in hitters. And I thought about this a lot, and I don't know how I feel about it today. I kept thinking to myself as I was holding out whether to put an X next to him. If he misses by 1 vote, how will I feel if I didn't vote for him? If he gets in by 1 vote, how will I feel if I voted for him? Like, I'm not at peace that I voted for him. I think I did the right thing. I felt much stronger about the other 4 guys and ultimately came to, I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Look, I think you have an excellent ballot in that you're nuanced in your thinking and you are willing to make some sort of accommodations here and there as to the specifics of each case. Also, knowing that Helton and Billy Wagner are on the border. Like, it's easier for me to push for both, and I love both. And I think Billy Wagner would get my vote much more quickly, and you think no, that he's below the line. But they are on the border. There could be a no vote, you know, here, an intelligent no vote as well, because you need to keep this somewhat exclusive. I get that.
Look, I think that Todd Helton and Billy Wagner are better than 98% of the people who have ever tried to play Major League Baseball. What's your borderline? That's what we're deciding. It's like, I feel terrible because ultimately what I always try to tell people is you vote for people, not against them. Like, I didn't vote against Billy Wagner. I didn't vote against Todd Helton. I voted for 5 guys. And it's not an easy thing because I think they are great players. I think they are great players. I think Andrew Jones is a great player. By the way, to simply get on the ballot means you spent 10 years in the major leagues with distinction. All of them are great players, and the question is, what's your borderline?
Good ballot. Really good ballot. And look, that's, you do have to draw, the border is going to be somewhere. In this age of social media, too, it's easier to say yes on this guy, and everybody feels good about us, maybe no on this guy. But, you know, you get 10, that's it. Joel's going 5 deep.